let them all know that we heard them all. A pandemic can't stop us. So this is kind of fun. This is actually my first public event since the shutdown of the world. So it's nice to see half of everybody. Now can I invite Adriana Smith and Violet Rickard to do a young ladies woman's dance behind us.
Let's give our young ladies a round of applause. Ariana Smith and Violet Printup. So this song and dance that we're going to do is known as Eskene Gainasir, the New Woman Shuffle Dance. It's a dance in honor of the women, of Mother Earth, of the Sky Woman who fell from the heavens to create this beautiful, beautiful place that we get to walk upon. So our women being the most crucial and being the backbones of Haudenosaunee culture and society, these women are going to be our leaders here in the future, these two ladies, and women just like them all over the North American continent. So here we go, Eskene Gainasir, the New Woman Shuffle Dance. Niki Gardakwa, Nekaya Nerdakova, Nekaya Nerdakova, Nehawe Hawe Ne Kainavia, Yada Satsevani Gorha, Neskana, Agage, Neanskani, Onde de Wawenuni, Ongwan Negora, Ongwan Negora, Hawe Hawe Ne Kainavia. Ane wali wayandache, neskana negali wiya neka sastansera. Niki kardakwa, nekaya nerdakova, nekaya nerdakova, nehawe nekai napjaya. We're gonna do one more, short one. Panawe hayo havini, panawe hayo vini, panawe yo he kainawe ya ya ganawe hayo vini, panawe hayo havini, panawe hayo vini, panawe yo he kainawe ya ganawe hayo vini, panawe hayo havini. Anawe hayo wine, anawe yo he kainawe ya ya anawe hayo wine, anawe hayo wine, anawe hayo wine, anawe yo he kainawe ya anawe hayo wine, anawe hayo wine, anawe hayo wine, anawe yo he kainawe.
So we're all here today for the unveiling of the Peace Garden. This Peace Garden was the brainchild of Michele-Elise Burnett. She is a Métis Aboriginal organizer on the other side of the river. Over the last few years, she's been working more and more on this side of the Niagara River. However, as we all know, with the border crossing, she's unable to be here today. So on her behalf, Jordan once again will talk about some of Michelle's words on how we got here today. So once again, let's welcome Jordan back.
And I'm just going to read right off here for verbatim. I'm not going to change anything. These are Michelle's words. It says, "Today we have much to celebrate. We celebrate the significant achievements and contributions by indigenous peoples. We celebrate our diverse, deep-rooted culture, traditions, and heritage. We celebrate walking together as indigenous peoples. We celebrate the strides which are helping pave the way to create a cross-culture society that is built on respect, integrity, and friendship. We celebrate us, and today we celebrate the inaugural unveiling of the Native American Peace Garden at Artpark. A special garden, a reflection spaces for healing, celebrating tranquility, and to the beginnings of polishing the covenant change that was left to tarnish after the War of 1812. This garden is more than a place to reflect and take in the beautiful settling along the Niagara River. It is an outdoor classroom led by Native elders, knowledge keepers, storytellers, who will share their traditions, culture, and knowledge through various workshops and teachings. It will strengthen our connections to Mother Earth through honor and traditional stories, songs, all while cultivating and learning about Native American plants and their medicines. It is a place to remind us to be grateful and to honor and respect one another and all living things. This is our new history going forward, with platforms where we can tell our stories from our lens. It is also the beginning of a friendship between Artpark and the Native communities of Western New York. Collectively, we are creating, designing, and curating programs that will convey the meaning, depth, substance, and significant contributions of Native cultures to American history and society. Inclusion of Native history has been virtually absent. There has been little evidence of the important historical and contemporary events included Native people's involvement, knowledge, and perspective, and little or no integration of those events into the larger narrative of American history. Together, we will broaden the limited views held out about Native peoples with platforms such as this garden. This Native American Peace Garden confirms and reinforces Artpark's intention to reawaken the spirit of solidarity among friends who once forged history together. It always amazes me how dreams and visions can come true. Even during these surreal pandemic times, two different nations from two different countries, or as we would say, from both sides of the Niagara River, come together virtually to build this magnificent legacy project at Artpark. I extend my deepest gratitude to the Peace Gardens team, from Tuscarora, Rene Rickard Printup, Bryan Printup, and Vince Schiffert, who have never met me but still embraced my vision. We brainstormed, designed, and they built this incredible peace garden in only 2 months during the June heat. Their unwavering commitment to this legacy project is commendable. Miigwech to the Native Strawberry Moon Festival team, many who are here today sharing their teaching, songs, and dance in honor of the unveiling. And also Nyaw and Miigwech to Sonia Clark and her team at Artpark for understanding the importance and therefore committing to Native presence at Artpark via the Strawberry Moon Festival and projects such as this. These are the partners we need to walk side by side with to create the strong, sustainable paradigm shift we need in this country. Thank you once again, Nyaw Miigwech, Michele-Elise, Burnett, artistic producer, Artpark's Strawberry Moon Festival. Once again, let's give a round of applause to those Tuscarora Nation members who helped put this together, and a round of applause for Artpark and everybody involved. Nyawagoa.
As we all know, endeavors like this cannot be done alone. It really does take a community, and Michelle did bring up a lot of people from Tuscarora and locally who worked on this project. But we have to remember that it's at Artpark, and Michelle worked with Sonia Clark for many months making sure that this happened. I would like to invite Sonia Clark up right now, and she can talk some of that process that she worked with Michelle to make this happen. Can we welcome Sonia Clark right now?
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody, for gathering with us today. Of course, I'm so honored, and on behalf of Artpark Board of Directors, I wanted to thank this community, all of us, for coming together in this process. Michele-Elise Burnett has been our guide, my teacher, and in understanding the presence and the culture and the lives of our neighbors and the meaning of this land. I'm very grateful for our neighbors, our community, our brothers and sisters from Tuscarora and generally Iroquois nations for sharing this land with us. We come from different parts of the world. I grew up in Russia. I came here as an adult, and I get to benefit from this land. I'm sure many people in this audience share that fate. We come from all over, and we get the benefit of this land, and for that, we're very grateful to you guys. Thank you. The process of building this garden is just another step in a long process that started years ago when one of our board members at Artpark, Seymour Knox IV, introduced me to Michele-Elise Burnett, a great curator and scholar of the Native American culture on the other side of the border. It took a few years for us to actually come up with a concept that would make sense, and we started with, well, our first steps actually were with the musical, The Odyssey. We had Iroquois marching band, and Neil over here, thank you so much, jumped into this great production where we represented actually all facets of our community on the stage with that show. Then came Sound of the Community with Sir Baptiste again. Neil and Alan joined us together in sharing communication through the through the rhythm, through music instruments. Then came the Strawberry Moon under Michele-Elise's curatorship and scholarship. And here we are now with our new garden and a new place for sharing, new place for learning, for reflection. So much more is to come in this physical space. We will do workshops, we will do more engagement opportunities in the seasons to come, more performances. And here we are. I congratulate you all on this great step and all these faces that are amazing to see beyond our masks, that we persevered and we have this summer and we have this opportunity for sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonia. So in June, I got a call from Michele-Elise. She was like, I really want this to happen this summer. What can we do? And we would brainstorm twice a week for about a month. I was really hopeful that the Seneca Iroquois National Museum would reopen and I would have staff on hand to help out with the day's festivities. But as we progressed further and further into our current situation, it just became clear that I wouldn't be able to do community-based programming at this event this year. And it really did sadden me. At one point, Michele-Elise and I, we were discussing what could we do that would be really symbolic to represent this day. And we decided that maybe we would reach out to Rich Hamill and see if he would make a belt to commemorate this day. And so at this time, we would like to present that belt to Sonia Clark and Artpark.
Well, I live on the other side of the world, south of Rochester, where we still are having the same problems. Come up here, Sonia. So I had a thing about a belt. I've been making wampum belts for 20 years. And so here we have in the center is the garden representing the sky world, Turtle Island being the green, 4 sacred directions that surround it. On my right hand side is the settlers, the colonists, in friendship with the First Nations. On the border of that are the rafters or the supports of the longhouse, reminding and celebrating that you are within the longhouse of the Untitled. My pleasure to have this for you. And thank you for asking.
Thank you, Sanana. Thank you so much.
Isn't that a beautiful belt?
Oh, yes.
I've just been watching it grow from email GIF over the last couple months, and it is really beautiful. Rich, how many hours in a belt like that?
Oh,
Two? Oh, he took forever though. I got like 2 weeks of emails on this.
yeah, I go by the number of band-aids used. Probably a lot more time and months in designing it, coming up with a belt that will signify everything that they've done.
Next, we would like to invite Daryl Tonema up to do some Tuscarora singing and storytelling. Everyone give a round of applause to Daryl.
Good afternoon. My name is Daryl Tonema. I'm Kiowa Comanche in Tuscarora, and I live here, and Lewiston is my favorite town. And to have something here commemorate a sense of community is just pretty awesome. So when I was downstairs thinking about, in our basement today, thinking about what song should I sing, not till I pulled up did I decide I wanted to play a flute song. So Carminta, my gracious wife, ran and got the flute. And it's hard playing flute in the wind, so let's see how this goes. I want to tell you a story about the flute. Since this garden represents shared community, healing among communities, there was a little boy, and he had the hots for this best looking girl in the village, and man, he wanted to talk to her, but he had no game. And so he would walk around and kind of kick the dirt and say, oh, she's so good looking, I just don't know what to say to her. And he was walking out in the woods one day, and he heard a knock on a tree, and he looks up and he saw a woodpecker pecking on the tree, and then a breeze came along and made a noise to that hole, and he thought, oh, that's so beautiful. And then he hopped over and pecked another hole, and then another breeze came along, and he thought, oh, that's just the best thing I've ever heard. And then another hole. There's 6 holes, you get it. Okay. And then a breeze comes along and it does this. And he said, that's just the best thing. What if I took that branch and played it for that good looking Indian girl, and she just fall in love with me? And so he asked the woodpecker. He said, Mr. Woodpecker, would it be okay if I took that branch and from you? And the woodpecker said, you mean this branch that I've been banging my head against to feed my children all day long? And the guy said, yeah. And the woodpecker said, I don't know. So the guy offered him some food. And the woodpecker said, why do you want this branch so bad? And the boy said, it's because there's a girl. And the woodpecker says, oh, it's always about a girl. So he gave him the branch. And he went and shines it up and puts leather on it, and he made the first one was honor of the woodpecker. You see, this here is actually called the bird. That part of it, and it kind of looks like a bird because he wanted to honor the woodpecker. So he went and knocked on the girl's longhouse and says, good looking Indian girl. And she says, come back later, I'm doing the dishes. And he said, I want to play something for you. So she comes out and she says, what? And he said, I got something to show you. So he played a song for her. And they fell in love, and they had a bunch of kids and made a community that started with a song. Now today, when I was thinking about what songs I want to play, I'll play with this on, I think. Can you still hear me okay? Just so you know, when I sing and I don't have this on, I sound like Pavarotti. So my day job, when I'm not rocking Artpark, I'm a psychologist. And I work a lot in trauma and healing. And here's something cool that I've learned over the years, is that healing occurs only in community. It doesn't heal in silos. And what trauma, being kind of a jerk, wants us to think that we have to live in our silo and we have to gather ourselves and gather our things and hide and hide and hide and hide. And come to find out is healing is just the exact opposite of that. We suffer in silos, but we heal in community. And the science behind that is the vagus nerve and the limbic system, the brain. The neural pathway for healing is paired with the neural pathway for community, for being social. And so when we have something like this in this community, in this space, I just think that's pretty awesome. Because when we say it's a healing place, it is literally a healing place because people gather here, and that's the intention, is for people to gather here. The sun would shine on a face like mine. We find our way in our own sweet time. And I believe in love. And I believe in strength from above. And everything will work out fine in this little world of mine. Oh, we stop and talk, that's what's right. We walk our walks and fight our fights. Can't you see, I wanna hold your hand. Can you see, can you understand that everything will work out fine in this little world of mine? Where green means go and no means stop, and cynic's a word you have to look up. Can we dance a while? Can we not fake our smiles? Where everything will be just fine in this little world of mine, of mine. My friends, draw near, 'cause this peace garden is here. Invites us close so we can heal. Invites us close so we feel what we feel. It's alright. It's alright. On the banks of a river, where the feelings go. On the banks of the river, let love grow. It's alright. It's alright. Hear the echo of the drum from the far shore. Hear the echo of the drum, and we want more. It's alright. It's alright. 'Cause all we really want are comfortable shoes, cheap buffets and ideal views. And I'm free to walk in the sun. I'm free to say you're the one. And everything will be just fine in this little world of mine, of fine. It'll be just fine. Just fine. It'll be just fine. It'll be just fine, 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 just fine. This is my favorite song about healing. You guys are welcome to clap along. They say everything has its place. Yet every distance is not near. So I remember the face of the one who loves me here. And I see my lights come shining from the west now to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Say everyone is protection. Oh, they say everyone will fall. Yet I swear I can see my reflection. So high above these walls. And I see my lights come shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Standing next to me in this lonely crowd is a man who's not to blame. And I hear him sing out loud, there's forgiveness in my name. Oh, I see my lights come shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. And I see my light come shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Thank you, everyone. Let's take care of each other. Let me do it.
Can we say thank you to Dr. Daryl Tonema? This guy does everything, doesn't he? Next, we would like to invite Renee Rickard up. She is one of the 3 Tuscarora folk who were integral in building this peace garden today. Can we invite Renee, and she's going to tell us a little bit?
Chua Eskanaha, Giather, Rene Rickard, Agisa Sita Ujiha, Wakdana Skaruda, Ekohewa Gaidakra, Wakutna Skaruda, Afnawita Udaya, Hakanaharata. So, hi everyone, my name is Renee Rickard. Technically Rene Rickard Printup. But I would just like to welcome everybody to the new turtle garden. I gotta lower this a little bit just so I can do this. Okay. So, it was a very interesting process with me getting involved in doing this garden because first off, I'm not a professional. So as we approached this garden, I called in people because Michelle had, actually Alan Jimerson had reached out to me and asked if I could, bring some people together to do a garden. And at first I was thinking a community garden where people plant food. So I'm like, sure, I can bring people in. And then as I talked with Michelle, it ended up being a peace garden, and we, went round and round on design and everything. And I brought in Bryan Printup and Vince Schiffert. So they were very helpful in, first of all, Bryan in design, and then second of all, Vince and all of his knowledge with plants, which was the biggest part for me, is because that would be my weakness. Is I know plants, but I don't know a lot about them. So then as we started the garden, we realized that it didn't really start out as like a medicine wheel with the discussions with Michelle. But as I thought about it and we discussed it more, we just really felt that it was more important to have it in the shape of a turtle. And so with the healing garden, we felt it was important. And I wrote some notes down on my phone. So if I'm looking down my phone, that's why I'm not checking my Facebook or my email or anything. So we felt that, yes, a peace garden is very important for anybody, any person, walk of life. And when we came here and we actually sited this location, we realized that this was probably the best spot for it, because people are, very disconnected nowadays, whether we're more connected to our phone than we are, or whatever, internet. And so we felt that it was important that we help people reconnect. And so all along through this process, I was calling it a connection garden, because I feel like a person could come down here, they either could connect with themselves or with a friend or family member, the natural world, and then most importantly, this major water resource, which is the Niagara River. And so that's how we start getting this going. And so once we got it going, we then moved it on to the turtle design. And I don't know if many of you know, but for Haudenosaunee people, a turtle is very important because that's the first being that supported Sky Woman when she came down from Sky World. And I know you can research the whole story about Sky Woman, but Turtle Island to us is what you would call the North America. And if you look at the map, it does actually look like a turtle. And so from there, we discuss it more, and as we would come down and we try to lay it out and, try to make this site as safe as possible, because, we were a little concerned about, the ravine right there. So spacing was very, very important for us. But then also how we position the turtle. So if you look at the turtle is actually facing north. And we wanted to, originally we had to then redesign it. And so we actually made the entryway coming in from the east, and then people can exit on, through the west. In a second phase will eventually be that we should get some type of benches in here where people can come and reflect, and, that will be down the road. And so then lastly, we position the head. So this would be the head right here. And the very tip of it is actually facing the river. And so we felt that was important because people can connect, but we also wanted to have that symbol that turtle is still keeping an eye on that water and how important water is to people. And because it's everybody's garden, we wanted to try to make it very identifiable and relatable to all Native people. And so that's how we incorporated these messages in here. So once you walk in and look at it, you'll see that there are 4 colors, which is something very important to other Ongwa people across Turtle Island. But also then bringing in our own Haudenosaunee messages. And so when you read the rocks, there's messages that we have drawn from our own Haudenosaunee philosophies, to remind people that there are important protocols and aspects that they should be, trying to keep their minds on. And so, like the yellow ones say, only take what you need. And that's an important thing that we should be telling everybody in a day when we have overconsumption of resources. So reminding people only take what you need, and to protect Mother Earth. Like, those are important things for every person that walks this earth. And then in Haudenosaunee belief, we always say, give thanks to the Creator. And I wanted that one to the north and on white, because we kind of don't have a vision for Creator. We always know He's there and He's with us. So we put that one on the north and on the white. And so on the west, someone might come in here and have a troubled mind, and we hear it all the time in Haudenosaunee culture. Make sure you keep a great mind. They're always reminding us, keep a good mind. And so we had to make sure to keep that message. If somebody comes in here with a troubled mind, that could be their connection of yeah, I got to bring my mind back and focus. And then the one dish, one spoon, I don't know if people are really familiar with it, but it is a wampum bout for the Haudenosaunee people. And it's talking about our resources and reminding people that every species, whether they be human or that little bug that could be walking on that plant, we all eat from that one dish and that one spoon. And so if you connect that back to only take what you need, we're protecting everybody. And then the last one was just a very, great law of peace. That's the foundation for the Haudenosaunee, and that, we always got to remind ourselves that that's what we're supposed to be living by. So once we got through design in that, and we had our messages, we then looked at the plants, and this is where Vince came in. That was his specialty, and I wish he could have been here, but he was unavailable today. And so we looked at plants, and we looked at the cultural significance to some of these plants to Haudenosaunee people, but then we also wanted to take it to another level of not just being able to provide provide this educational tool for people, but then also to provide a sustenance. So for those butterflies and the bugs that will depend on plants like this, we kind of wanted that aspect brought into it. And so we chose these plants very specifically, and it was kind of cool because when we were starting this project, we had these little indicator messages that the natural world knew we were putting this here. And on our very first day, we come walking up and kind of looking at trying to lay out the site, and first thing in the morning there was a nice red-tailed hawk in that tree over there. Took off when he saw us, and that was the nice indicator for us to say, okay, we're on our right path. But then as we progressed, then that's when we seen the butterflies and the bees kind of hey, you got a plant there, let me go check this out. To the one morning, this nice little chipmunk running around the garden, and I'm going, oh shoot, there's a chipmunk in here. I don't know if this is good or bad, but it is what it is. So if we talk about these plants, the very first one here, and this is the one I've been worrying about the whole time, is Cardinal Flower. This beautiful red flower here. It actually likes growing in some really wet soil, and I've been worrying about this one the whole time. But it's and it's a beautiful flower. Hummingbirds, as it progresses, will probably really gravitate to this one. And so this little small one, and I can't talk about them specifically because it's not my expertise, and I can say that some of these do have some medicinal purposes, but the reality is the people that really know that are the medicine people, and so they're the ones that would know the process of protocol, collecting, storage, preparation. And so I'm not really going to go into detail on that, but I will identify them. So then this next one is called foam flower, and these are all picked up by Vince. And then if you come right to the center one, it's Solomon seal, not false Solomon seal, but the real Solomon seal. And right here is bee balm, and these ones will be really pretty. They got a really pretty red flower. And we come down to this one, and I have to look because I did make notes. Wild bergamot. So this one right here will be a wild bergamot, and eventually this one will be a butterfly bush. So if you go behind me, I go turn this way. We have some black-eyed Susans, and as you can see, they're struggling a little, so we'll have to get on that. So then coneflower, which is like an echinacea, and then we got some wild bergamot again. And the very tall one in the back is called Joe Pye weed, and that's Vince was really excited that we found this one actually at Russell's. And so some of them we bought at Russell's, but Russell's and Ferries. But then others, we had a very cool donation from the Knox Farm State Park. They have a nursery there where one of the workers actually goes and harvests native plants. And so he was actually able to donate some of these plants for us, which was really cool, because at one point we were probably going to have to go harvest them. And I had to remind Vince, I don't think it's good that the environmental program director is actually harvesting plants from the nation territory to bring down onto to Artpark. I had to say we need to back off that situation, because that's my full-time job, is I'm the environmental director at Tuscarora Nation. So back to plants, we have boneset, and then we have over here is wild ginger. And so we do have a couple more we're waiting, but they're really young, and Kevin from Knox Farm said we could probably get them in there, and it's bloodroot, but he said it was really tiny to get in right now. So I really would like to thank Sonia for allowing this space to come here, and Michelle for her vision, but also the volunteers, Brian, Vince, my husband Billy Joe, and Violet. Like, there was Billy Joe, Violet, Vince, and myself were the core workers that actually installed this, and it was really because we couldn't guarantee that it would be social distancing. And so we had to kind of just limit people from coming in here. And let's see, Brian Carey, who works at Parks, he would stop in and check to see that we had everything that we needed. And Kevin McNally from Knox Farms. And then lastly is Acom Construction Incorporated. He helped me when I would have a question about like design and width and maybe where I needed to get something. So he was one of my my tools. And then in closing, I have a little story to tell about this. I think it's very important that we heal. And I actually had started my healing journey a while back and stopped for a while. And I do have some trauma from childhood. And I picked it up actually maybe 2 weeks before I started this garden. And I really think that I needed this garden more than the garden needed me, because through this process, putting this garden together, it was actually, I felt like I was putting myself back together. And we'd have trial and error, and you'd have to be resilient, and it taught me to just roll with the punches and not let things get too out of hand. So I'd like to thank Sonia once again, and welcome to the garden. Yahweh.
Again, thank you, Renee. It's a beautiful garden. I can't wait for next year when everything comes in fuller. We are moving on So I am not just a museum director. I'm also an academic. And one of the things that I like to do is, in my research, I'm a cultural anthropologist. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm a cultural anthropologist. So I always look for behavior. I'm really interested in behavior and what people do as their practices. And so for me, with Haudenosaunee people, I like to see the expressions of peace. And so in a lot of my research, I looked at the concept of peace under the word scano. I was actually combining two words there just now, the English and the Haudenosaunee word. But I'm really interested in this concept of scano, and in my research, it has taken me pretty darn far into the historical record. And in my research, I come across all of these treaty belt events where we do come together as one people, as brothers and sisters in the form of forest diplomacy. And in a lot of instances, we can also see when we don't have unity in the historical record because of an absence of wampum. So for Haudenosaunee people, when we think about ideas of wampum, coming together, coming of one mind, creating peace, we have wampum involved. And so today I'm going to talk about two treaties real quick that took place in this area. The first treaty actually affected this area quite significantly. And then the second treaty actually took place at Fort Niagara. And I simply want to talk about these two treaties because the first treaty lacks wampum. And the second treaty has all the pomp and circumstance of forest diplomacy that we have seen throughout the Northeast from the time of the European arriving here up until the times of George Washington. So the first one I want to talk about is called the Nan Fan Treaty of 1701. In this treaty, it says that the Haudenosaunee surrendered all forms of sovereignty to the British Crown. We might need to back up a little bit. So the reason why I'm bringing up the Nan Fan Treaty is because whenever you look at any of the historical documentation revolving around this event, there is no mention of speakers holding up wampum and declaring themselves with their awakening strand before they spoke. And it is quite customary in all forms of forest diplomacy to address your audience by saying three simple lines. With this first strand, I wipe away the tears from your eyes so you can see your brothers and sisters cheerfully. With this second strand, I remove any obstacles going to your heart so you can love all people. And with this third strand, I wipe away any blood from your birth so you may love once again. And so whoever the speakers were in these instances of forest diplomacy, they would say these words because they are adhering to customary practices that were adhered for many, many centuries. So we have a man named John Nan Fan in 1701. He is appointed by the British Crown to serve as governor of New York State. So you have to remember, New York State wasn't a state, it was a colony, sorry about that. And in 1701, it's still on the other side of the Finger Lakes. So that colony is restricted to the eastern part of this state. And so there's a colonial governor at the time. He dies, he has a heart attack, and they replace him with John Nan Fan. John Nan Fan is a government official from the Caribbean. He's never been to New York. He's never dealt with native people in Iroquois. But he brags in a letter to the king saying that he could bring the Iroquois under the crown's rule and acquire all their land. So in August of 1701, he has a meeting with all the Haudenosaunee chiefs. All the chiefs went to this ceremony, but the reason why they all went to this ceremony is because they actually just left Montreal and they signed a treaty with the French there, and there's actually a belt to that treaty. So on their way back down, they stop in Albany and they converse with John and they negotiate a treaty. Within this negotiation, in the English words, it says that the Haudenosaunee gave up all sovereignty and gave up essentially 400 miles that way. Once you hit 400 miles, you go south 800 miles and come up the Ohio River Valley along the Allegheny Mountains back up to Lake Ontario. We don't have any proof of this. We just have one piece of paper. So for me, as a Haudenosaunee scholar, I like to get a full view of the historical record. So for me, I just don't rely on the written word. For me, I look for the other words. And in this case, we don't have any of the decorum. We don't have any speaking of wampum. We don't even have an exchange of a belt. And as you guys saw earlier, at every event that we're trying to commemorate and remember forever, we like to give a belt, and that's why we gave a belt today to Artpark. So we can always remember this event, right? And we can come back together next year at this time and renew that brotherhood and sisterhood amongst ourselves. And we can remember what happened on August 1st, 2020, because we have a belt that signifies that moment. This treaty, 1701, has caused so many legal problems for Haudenosaunee peoples on both sides of this river for the last 319 years. When Rich and I were doing the research on this project, he started coming up with newspaper articles from Ontario, because the Canadian government still honors this treaty. They see it as a living document. And so as a result, our brothers and sisters on the other side of this river use that document to ensure that they have hunting and fishing rights. Over here, we don't recognize it at all. And that leaves me a little funny about it as well, right? It's being used selectively on how it's a living document. However, if we had wampum, we would have a fuller picture. And so that's one of the things that I like to do as a scholar. I like to look at history with slightly different eyes. And I try to find human behavior in that historical record, because I feel that it gives me a deeper picture into that past. So the next treaty that I want to talk about is the Treaty of 1764. That treaty took place up at Fort Niagara. Rich and Neil, can you guys bring that treaty belt? So I am actually so glad that Renee talked about the importance of peace, because you guys actually have an understanding now of why we use wampum. So it makes it easier for you guys to follow me along with my story. So this treaty took place at Fort Niagara with Sir William Johnson. He was the British lead of the Indian Department for the British Empire. And actually, I've been thinking about Sir William Johnson for a couple months now. You know, because in forest diplomacy, he is the highest ranking British person that most Haudenosaunee folks have ever seen. And so in a lot of people's eyes, I believe at the time, there was no one greater from the British Empire than William Johnson. And he was well trusted and well loved by Haudenosaunee folks. And actually, a lot of these treaties, from the time that he took over as Indian Department head for the government, he really went out of his way to ensure that in the English wording of all the treaties, that the Haudenosaunee peoples were sovereign peoples. and he followed forest diplomacy. So what we have here is the Treaty Belt of 1764. Rich, can you talk about it just real briefly?
Yeah, very briefly. Here we had the symbols here. Alan Colbert in Canada suggests that this is the one dish, one spoon image Steve mentioned earlier. Here we have the spoon and the dish. There's four of them. One dish will feed all. And the reason why they use a spoon is that you can't draw blood. The reason they have the spoon is that you can't draw blood when you're eating. So nobody is to be caught. No injuries during the feeding. This belt is like the George Washington belt in that it's designed to form a circle, and so the circle is never ending. It's not to be broken. Where's Joe?
Joe's right here. But you know, just looking at the one belt, it gives you a really good example of how important the symbolism was within forest diplomacy, right? This concept of one dish, one spoon permeates in all treaties with Haudenosaunee peoples. And to break it down a little bit, a lot of Haudenosaunee people would simply say, we share everything out of the bowl, one spoon. The ultimate form of sharing. But when you look at these treaties, in order to make it one dish, one spoon, everyone has to contribute ingredients to the stew that everyone is eating. And so in the 1764 treaty, the British wanted to make sure they held on to the fort here, but they also wanted continued access to all the waterways, because all these waterways keeps going deeper and deeper into America. And so the British, the Haudenosaunee said, well, you have to contribute something, and so they wanted military help to control all this territory. They wanted to make sure that other nations, other native nations, did not come into the hunting grounds. They wanted to make sure that British citizens would quit squatting on Haudenosaunee lands. This became a very big problem at this time. We have documentation after documentation of British squatters going into homes and just simply killing Haudenosaunee peoples and squatting on their lands. This is a very real issue, and the Haudenosaunee needed it stopped. So in turn, the Haudenosaunee agreed to work with the British Empire because they wanted peace. In order for anyone to progress as a civilization, we need peace. And peace is essential. Also, may I read one more quote? No. Have you guys heard of Devil's Hole? Right down the road. 1763. A detachment of Seneca warriors in a matter of minutes killed 80 British soldiers. They were going down the gorge, and a group of Seneca warriors dispatched them very quickly. And that actually goes back to disputes where we have British citizens squatting, but we also have British colonial officials trying to displace Haudenosaunee rule and leadership in these regions. And they had a pre-existing treaty with the British. And just because the British kept breaking it, the Haudenosaunee treaty or not, they're going to defend themselves, and they did. And they quickly showed the British what they could do. So at 1764 rolls around, Johnson fully understands that he can never bring the Haudenosaunee under British Crown rule, because they tried about 5 times from 1701 into 1764. Let me read one last quote. This takes place 1 year after the negotiations of Fort Niagara. These people had subscribed to a treaty with me at Niagara in August last. But by the present treaty I find they make expressions of subjection, which must either have arisen from the ignorance of the interpreter or by some mistake. For I am well convinced they never mean or intend anything like it, and they cannot be brought under our laws for some centuries. Neither have they any word which can convey the most distant idea of subjunction. And it should be fully explained to them and the nature of subordination, punishment, etc. defined. It might produce infinite harm, and I dread its consequences, as I recollect that some attempts towards sovereignty not long ago was one of the principal causes of all of our problems. And what he is saying right here, every time that the British Crown tries to put the Haudenosaunee under their thumb, something happens, and he's actually referring to Devil's Hole. He knows that he has no power over the Haudenosaunee whatsoever. And these treaty bouts actually prove it, because a treaty bout is actually an agreement between two sovereigns. So by Johnson simply accepting the bout, he accepts them as a sovereign nation. And so, in conclusion, did you want to show a few more bouts?
Yeah, just kind of merge the two with your speech.
Okay. So, you know, as a researcher, as a Haudenosaunee researcher, I like to look at everything that I can. Because by simply just taking a few extra steps, not relying on the written word, we can get a deeper picture into that past. And if we do so, we can even see how that I don't know what to call it, but it is a power within Haudenosaunee communities to keep resisting citizenship and that plenary control of the United States government to this day.
This is a replica of the 1701 Treaty of Montreal that Joe just talked about. When you look at wampum belts, if they got diagonals in it, it's a signature of the Haudenosaunee, the longhouse, support of the longhouse. The next belt that we're going to talk about for commemorating today, the Nan Fan, we need to mention the Fort Stanwix belt. Again, you see the rafters. A white belt is tranquil peace. And this is signed in Rome, New York, 1768, saying that all lands west are the Iroquois forever. That didn't last too long. Going back even further to 1613, this is a replica of the two-row belt, obviously called because there's two rows or two rivers, indicating that the colonists are to stay in their boat, in their river, where their laws and govern. Do not cross over into the Haudenosaunee River, where their laws and customs do not violate. Again, separate but equal. And then again, that's 1613, and that didn't last as long as you're probably well aware of. So that brings us up to the next thing that Joe's going to talk
Let me finish up real quick. So, first of all, I'm really honored that Richard Hamill really wanted to present with me. I've been following his work for about 2 decades. He's done remarkable research locating wampum strings, finding old belts. I refer to his work all the time. I can't do half of my research if I don't have your materials, Rich. And so I really value that he took the time to work with me. Rich also made this other wampum belt. Rich, can you talk about it a little bit better than I could? Yes, sir.
This is a merger of the two belts we just talked about. The Fort Stanwix belt, the diagonals, and the two-row belt, the horizontal. When we talked about the Nan Fan, I never heard of it before. Never seen a belt, and I wanted to see one. It doesn't exist. So working with Joe, we thought we kind of develop one, merging both of his belts of treaties that have been broken. And hence, that's why you see with the Haudenosaunee on my left-hand side with a 2-row belt that goes to 1. The white or the colonists only see a single road, and that's leading west to more land. Notice the feet are facing west. No heart, and the Haudenosaunee got a white heart. Up here, as we talked about, wampum speaks the truth, holds the truth. So this is called the new, I wouldn't call it Nan Fan, it's called the Broken Treaty Belt. And donating this to the Seneca Museum.
Yeah, wait, Rich. Feels like I have a lot of bling right now. So we are coming to an end, but we do have some final words from Neil Patterson Sr. But before I turn it over to Neil, I want to thank everyone for coming today. It means a lot. You know, in an age where things are a little wonky right now, it's good to see people coming together with the concept of peace in mind. And whenever you need a little bit of peace in your mind, you can come here and find it. And you never know, you might come here and find someone to talk to that day. So I encourage regular visitations. Make this a living moment. Before you guys go, I encourage you to go visit Rich's wampum belts. He has most of them back there. He has a few over here. If you have any questions, please just ask him. He is just a wealth of knowledge. But I would like to finalize with Neil Patterson. He's one of the organizers of this. I was so happy when I went to the first meeting and I saw you and Francine there. I was like, I know people. And I really know these people. They're great people. Here's Neil Patterson.
Give you $1 later on, Joe. But you look at these wampum belts and you think, oh, look at them old beads. They're not old beads. The 2-row wampum belt, a few years ago, well, maybe a decade ago or more, I was asked to go to a judges meeting. New York State judges of all of New York State. The lady that was running it looked at me and says, you guys have nothing in writing. I says, huh, how about that? I didn't say nothing, but I came back to the next meeting with a 2-row. I had a 2-row made. I made her 2-row. I says, see, these are our words. This is what we say. It ain't the way, we don't write things down. This is the way we talk, right here. We've got to understand what these belts say in order to understand what we're doing. And so, you know, we talked about it for many, many times, you know. And finally she says, she understood. But she was from New York City. That was hard to do. But she understood what we were doing and what we were talking about. So these belts still mean stuff. They still mean what they say in the beginning. We can't change them. They are what they are. You can't change what is written down before you because we didn't write it. You know, we didn't have nothing to say what went into that 2-row belt. We had nothing to say what went into these belts that you've just seen. And I use Richard Helmuth too. We didn't have our picnic this year. Our Tuscarora National Picnic would have been our 175th. So next year we'll have our 175th next year. It's going to skip a year. But you're all welcome to come. And when you do come, bring some money. In case you want to eat. We don't charge to get in, we don't charge to park, but you might want to eat some food. There's a lot of food. There's a lot of stuff for sale. And I invited Sonia Clark to come a few years ago. And that's where she first met the Iroquois Indian Band. She thought, hey, that's pretty neat. How do we get involved? I said, I don't know, give us some money. So she did. Artpark gave the Iroquois Indian Band some money. And we used it for scholarships for Indian youth that are going on to college. Not that they had to going on to college to learn music, but just going on to college, but had a musical background. So we did that, and we've been doing that for quite a few years now. And this year, Sonia, today, we're going to give out 2 scholarships in the name of Artpark. So it's a good thing, you know. Artpark's here. It's a place to come and walk around, visit. You see good people here, and you see Sonia Clark occasionally. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Did not rain.